When you walk up to someone and you get a no, or you breed a litter and it's not what you want, or you are stopped somehow, you walk right around that and you keep going. Because with that knowledge of your failure, I think those are the things that have served us the best overall.
Welcome to the Better Breeder Chronicles, brought to you by EasyWhelp Premium Whelping Boxes. Elevate your breeding program with EasyWhelp. In today's episode, we visit with Bill Shelton of Coventry Pembroke Welsh Corgis. Bill is one of the most respected and iconic breeders in purebred dogs. Highlights of the Coventry program include most of the breed records with multiple generations of national specialty and best in show winners. Coventry has won multiple groups at both Westminster and the AKC National Championship. They have many of the top 10 dogs in breed history, including the #1 ranked Pembroke for much of the past 2.5 decades. Bill is a multiple-time Winky Awards Breeder of the Year winner, which is now sponsored by Dog News and Purina Pro Plan. He's also earned similar awards as a handler and judge. Beyond that, Bill has become a leading voice in the purebred dog breeding world. He is a frequent teacher, columnist, lecturer, and thought leader on purposeful purebred dog breeding, domestically and abroad. Those who know Bill best say it is his kindness and passion for his breed that set him apart, and that he has created an incredible family of dogs by masterfully blending the best bloodlines from around the world. He is a breeder who is deeply rooted in breed history while actively shaping its future. Join me now in welcoming the master of Coventry, Bill Shelton. Bill and Steve, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you, and I am excited to hear the Coventry story here today. If you would, take us back to your beginnings. How did you guys get started in purebred dogs?
When I was young, I loved animals. It was just innately in my blood. So, and dogs became that. That's the connection to the natural world that we only have in urban, suburban areas. And so, dogs and cats. And so, I got my first dog, which was a basset hound of all things. It was very destructive, needed training, et cetera, et cetera. So I went to training class and met a fellow who became very instrumental in the early part of my life, named William Keeler, Bill Keeler. He, by the way, was the trainer of all the Walt Disney dogs, was a complete, incredible behavioralist and trainer of those times. And he wrote several books, and his method has, of course, now become a little more archaic, but he still, for his time, he was incredible. But anyway, I grew up in that world, in the obedience world, basically, until I started getting into junior high school. And I'll try to make this as quick as possible without making it too boring. And in that, I met another woman who became very instrumental in my life, because I was getting a Doberman pinscher, quite different than the Basset Hound. And her name was Mary Rogers of the Marienburg Kennel fame, of Doberman fame. And she and I's relationship became phenomenal, became incredible. I was just locked into everything she had to say and do. And she was so interested in my passion. And we actually learned a great deal about dogs together, about everything involving dogs, anatomy, reproduction, et cetera, et cetera. And that was so good for my early days. I did learn, as I started going through those years, that I needed to, as a youngster, either go get a job and go to dog shows on weekends, or become a dog handler. So for almost 2 decades, I became a professional dog handler. And interesting enough, in those days, you had to have a license to be a dog handler. So I had to wait until I was 21 years of age, and I had to apply. And when I applied, it's just like applying to judge breeds today. I had experience in 3 breeds that they gave me a license in, but they were in 3 groups, which was really good, because it gave you that opportunity to expand in those groups, which was Doberman pinschers, Afghan hounds, and pointers. And I can tell you my background in those, but I'll go ahead and jump ahead. So I worked with a very interesting hound woman who was married to Rick Shashutian, Yvonne Shashutian, and I was her assistant. But the greater part that I did is I went to Marienburg Kennels. How I talked my parents into it when I was a sophomore in high school, to go there and live and work and go to school at the same time and learn everything I possibly could. And my parents let me. I mean, they must have been tired of me or something. I don't know. But they let me, which I don't see how to this day they would want me to go, ha ha. But so I went there, and then our relationship even grew further, Mary Rogers and mine, and I was so engulfed into the breed, the Doberman Pinscher. So for another 20 years, I was involved with the Doberman Pinscher. I showed and finished multiple dogs, showed many top winners, had a great time, and I could go on and on about all that experience. But I'm trying to get to the Coventry part. And so I learned a great deal. And in my handling career, I advised many Doberman people on breeding programs. I bred with people on a small scale in that, and had a great deal doing that. I also became a handler for Scanson Kennels, which is one of the largest and oldest giant Schnauzer breeders in this country. And so in that term, we kept beating our own record with another top winner of all times, et cetera, et cetera. And I finished about 300 champions for her. And of course, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what she has now finished. And of course, they've gone on, because you interviewed Bill McFadden, and he and his wife showed a bitch who beat all of those records and went on and on and on, et cetera. Along with Vicky Seiler, who showed Champion Scanson's I Have a Dream, who was a group winner at the Garden, et cetera, et cetera. Beautiful dog. She and I cooperatively showed that dog because she was having a baby at part of the time. So I had the fun of winning a national and in some big awards with him while I showed him. He was quite a phenomenal dog. And so jumping forward a bit more, I was winding up not winding up, I was still showing dogs, and Steve and I met. And I knew I always wanted to breed dogs because that was what I really wanted to do. I did the handling to finance my life and to bring me to that point that I could. So Steve and I decided on Pembroke Welsh Corgis. And we had a friend named Sally Bishop, who was Fox Meadow Kennels, who at that time had the top winning Corgi of all times, champion.
Crazy.
Well, yeah, she was top winning, but they also had Willie Waddle of all names. And I forgot his kennel name. Oh, they're not going to be happy. No, her name is Fox Meadow, but she was Fox Meadow. And at any rate, we ended up getting our first dog from her, a male. Sure. And we showed him and finished him. And then we said, okay, we got to get a girl. So we acquired a girl from a woman named Gail Snary. And the breeding was basically Nebrayo and Larchmont, which brought an interest to us to our main mentor in Pembroke Welsh Corgis, which was Tim Battison of Nebrayo Kennels. And phenomenal man, incredible mentor. You know, he doesn't suffer fools. He's matter of fact. He has huge information and background about the breed and has years of observation. And I think that's the most important thing for being a breeder, is that you are a great observer of all things, other people's dogs, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, so that brings us up to that point. So we get a female, we breed her. And if I get too far ahead of myself, you just tell me, is that we breed her and we have a litter. And I was just reminiscing about this because we were still, this is how many years ago? 27? 27, 28 years ago. I used to take this puppy from the litter as she grew older, and I used to go in the den and stack her and say, look at this. Look how beautiful this is. I can't believe this. And I used to just do it on a regular basis. She went on to win 71 all-breed best in shows and won the group at the Garden twice. And she never won our national. She was a specialty winner, but she was just incredible on her legs. Now, I showed her for her first best in show, and those are great stories too, but we can move on.
She finished by winning Group 1s from the puppy class.
From the puppy class at Del Val Kennel Club, which is one of the largest shows in the West. And so it was just a phenomenal experience under Don Sturs. And he did the breed. There were like 78 Corgis in her that day. And then for the puppy to go best of breed and then go on and that day she actually only went second in the group under a woman who later gave her the group at the Garden, which was not Mrs. Clark, but the German Shepherd lady. We'll think of it instead of holding this up here. That's awful. I can't remember that right now, but I'm just excited about thinking about all these old times. So at any rate, she went on, and Michael Scott came out to see her, and Joan Scott, and at that time, and they said, "Oh yeah, well, we'd love to take her and try her for Mrs. Robeson, who backed a lot of dogs in those days. Not a lot, but a few dogs that were going to possibly be big winners." And anyway, she took off. Kathy Steen was the lady's name who did the group that day, and later gave her one of her groups. Mrs. Clark was the other judge who gave her the group at the garden. She never went best in show there, but that's okay. That was our humble beginnings. Are you ready for that?
And what was her registered name?
Champion Coventry Q. And so that's why I named her that, because she's the beginning of the line, right? Because we named her Q. And then her sister. So this is where Dr. Williams comes in, who we have a great association with, who is also, we couldn't do this without her. She's a huge part of our breeding program, and Dr. Becky Williams. And she said she'd like to have a Corgi. And we said, okay, well, we have a litter sister because we kept the two sisters. And that's part of an idea that we do, and we'll talk about it later in our how we breed dogs. And so
Champion Candle in the Wind.
Champion Coventry's Candle in the Wind. And she was also a best in show winner. As a matter of fact, she and BB went best in show on the same day. At one of the shows, BB won. That's Champion Coventry Q, as we call her, BB. And then she went on to be the third top producer in the history of our breed. So that was our first litter. So that's a lot of luck and good fortune. But we also had all the experience leading up to that. 30 some years of experience leading up to that. So I told Steve, I said, "Oh gosh, this is I love doing this. This is so much fun. This is what I always wanted to do. And we're going to have to prove that this just wasn't a fluke. That this just didn't happen because it happened to somebody and we were fortunate." So at any rate, that first bitch of ours that we bred to 3 different stud dogs, in all 3 litters, she produced 4 champions in each litter, and there were best in show specialty winners. And we had a great time. And we basically, that's the core, the base of our breeding program. And our oldest stuff goes back to that original bitch, that Larchmont bitch, who was the mother of that first litter. Oh, and by the way, the sire was Champion Nabria was front and center, who is one of the top producers of all time. And Tim Matheson's breeding, and it was just a great thing. It just all clicked and worked together. And I have a great deal of pride in associating myself with Tim Matheson, because he's like the cones in your breed. It's like any association you have with him is like, it's just steadfast and honest and has integrity, and you move forward. That's the beginning.
Take a step back and tell them how we got our name.
Oh, this is just a humorous story, and it's funny that Steve mentions it. So we were trying to think of a kennel name at the time when we first started, and we were going back and forth. And of course, Tim Matheson and his partner, they used the 2 states they were from, Nebraska and Iowa, and named their Nabria. So Steve and I were born. I was born in Kansas, and he was born in California. So we decided Calcan was not a good kennel name. So Steve restores and shows Jaguar cars, automobiles, vintage Jaguars. And so the home of Jaguar is Coventry, and it's an appropriate English name. So we decided to use the prefix of Coventry.
So it gives both of our worlds into it.
We jokingly say he shows cats, Jaguars, and
he shows dogs.
So that's basically how it kind of got started. We could go on for hours more with side stories about the whole thing, which is really a lot of fun. But
so you have this foundation bitch. You breed her 3 different ways, success in every litter. Where did you go from there?
Well, then we started breeding those litters, intermingling them and outcrossing. Okay, so I've listened to your program a couple times, and to other people, and they say, well, we base everything on bitches. Folks, it's not the only gene pool that's included in your litter. The dog has just as much influence. So, it's the whole both. They're both contributing. I don't put more emphasis on bitches, but I do put emphasis in my breed that I think the most, and perhaps I shouldn't, but the most beautiful corgis are usually bitches. So I kind of based our breeding program on certain lines who had certain bitches in them. One of them was a bitch named Champion Woodbine's Flashy Alibi, who was at the time, not because she was this, because she grew into it, because her son that we bred to was double exposure. Though Champion is it Woodbine? Yeah, Champion Woodbine's double exposure is that that's one part of the pedigree. She was a phenomenal bitch, and she was just gorgeous. The other one was that we kind of went through a side door into was Renfield, and that was a famous kennel name. Which these are all somewhat related, but not directly, but back a few generations. And Renfield's for your eyes only. Another phenomenal bitch, just balanced, beautiful type. One of my favorite outlines of all times. As a matter of fact, at the National, Glenda Cook judging BB's first National, which she never won the National, is that she was comparing BB and this bitch. And this bitch had BB beat on I'll just say it had her beat on type. Where BB excelled, the bitch she was talking, no one had legs like her. No one could run around the ring. And the other thing she had, and Joan Scott and I were talking about this just the other day, in 110-degree weather, she never quit showing. She would run just as fast. She may be panting, but she was a phenomenal. She had such will to be there and do that. So, and then the third bitch was Talleyrand's No Ordinary Love, who is a relatively small breeder in the Northeast who moved to Washington, and another phenomenally beautiful bitch. But that bitch also produced a stud dog named Champion Nebraia's No Greater Love, and Champion Talleyrand's No Greater Love, and Champion Talleyrand's, I forgot the other dog's name. Well, anyway, that's two of the dogs we bred our bitches to, and we had huge success, phenomenal success. Alone, we finished 12 or 14 champions out of the one, his name was Gabe, no Greater Love. And then the other one, we finished, well, we only bred two once, so we had four puppies, but they were very similarly bred out of that same bitch, Talleyrand's No Ordinary Love. So anyway, I really, those are the basis of kind of that part. And then we started experimenting breeding out. We bred out to a dog of Yolanda Lanninger's, who there's a group of us. Well, we've won the National Breeder Owner Handle as many times as any other breeder owner handler, I've been told. Yolanda has won it. She's won it more than anybody, but she's won it with dogs she hasn't necessarily bred. I'm sure she had everything to do with the breeding, but she was never listed as the breeder. So she's a phenomenal breeder. Lena Core is her kennel name, and phenomenal. And she today still to this day has beautiful type. So this is something I believe about. It's one of the tools in your toolbox as a breeder, and that is, of course, line breeding. Line breeding, because it gives you an idea of what you can get from one litter to the next. And if you're going to outcross, which many people do, they look at a dog and they see a phenotype or something a virtue that they want to capture, or some virtues they want to capture. So what they do is they take their line-bred dog to this other line-bred dog, and they breed them together. And so that first litter, what we find, and what I have found and most generally, is I get some that look like the mother's side and some that look like the father's side. And the intermingling there genetically has started, but the phenotype isn't expressing itself to me how I want it to be. So the mistake I found that most breeders will do, what do they usually do? They breed right back to their own dog. So it just dilutes everything they're trying to capture, in my opinion. They may be fortunate and still capture some of it, and depending on the dominance of the gene, but they virtually lose a great deal of what they went after. So that's why I think you should keep two bitches. And you should breed, and if you choose to breed that one bitch back into your own line, the other bitch should go back and be line bred somewhere to the other line.
Fellow breeders, see what your breeding program has been missing with Easy Whelp modular whelping boxes. From the durable Easy Classic design, To the spacious Easy Classic Tall, Easy Whelp sets a new standard for premium design and performance. Their innovative models were developed for simple setup and maximum safety, with features like the integrated safety rails to protect your next generation. The smooth, hygienic surface allows for quick wipe downs to maintain a sanitary environment. And the new window walled option, which I personally recommend, provides the next level of safety, confidence, and convenience. And for our Better Breeder audience, use coupon code BB15 to save 15% on your purchase. Elevate your breeding program today. Visit easywhelp.com. So you're actually saying when you outcross, you're actually going 2 generations into that outcross before bringing it back in?
I think it's the ideal or best way to do it. And if you're going to capture genes, because it's not going to be, in my opinion, until that 3rd generation, until you really see the intermingling in dog individuals of those genes, because we're playing Mendelssohn, we're just, this is all a test, we have no dynamic to make it happen. We just send those genes down that alley and hope they express themselves in the way we want. And we have been so lucky, I can't believe it, on many occasions. Now, but you do hit a wall sometimes. And then one day you wake up and you go,
I can't get out of here.
we got these beautiful things from these dogs, but we also got one thing that annoys you to no degree. So now what I found then was, then you dilute those genes again because that one gene bothers you, is then you start introducing, this is how I'm doing it now, is you introduce back all your old dogs back into that to try to get back that, or because you never had it before. But in that, it's just a balancing act, isn't it? Because you're giving up one thing for another and accepting something for another the whole time. But if one of those traits bothers you so much, you have to get rid of it, And so that's what I have found, that was what we're in the process of doing. And it's interesting, we've only been breeding 26 years, which is a drop in the bucket to a family of dogs, really. And particularly when you're in the evolution of learning, because we're learning what those genes how they'll express themselves when you breed to certain dogs. Interesting story for those people out there of yours. We bred out to a dog, and we had 2 puppies. One of them looked more like our bloodline, and the other one didn't really look like our bloodline. We had outcrossed to a really handsome line-bred dog. And a friend of mine, a famous breeder from New Zealand, was visiting, and Di Dickinson of Dwinella Kennels. And I told her, I said, I'm going to get rid of her. And she said, what? I'll take her. And I'm looking at her, like all people do. And they go, wait a minute. If somebody of this caliber wants it, it must be something there. She says, Bill, you should keep her. This is how those bloodlines develop. But because I'm not an observer of how those bloodlines developed, she told me this. So I waited a few more months, and this puppy grew. She started blossoming. And I just went, wow, that little ugly duckling's turning into really a swan. Yeah. So in that, we entered her at a specialty. I think she was 10 or 11 months old. We entered her at our specialty in Northern California, and we took her there. And a breeder named Linda Roberts was judging. And this puppy went reserve winner's bitch to the bitch who won the breed. And so it just goes to show you, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You've got to be able to have the resources to run those dogs on. The second thing I believe that people do too soon is, and I heard someone talking about this the other day in one of your podcasts, which I appreciate and I understand where they're coming from. But they said that you have to have the wherewithal to dispose of all the puppies in the litter if they aren't what you want. I disagree. And the reason I disagree, because they still carry those genes. And those genes are just a generation away. And so you can breed them back into your dogs, and you'll probably capture everything you had. Maybe you didn't take you anywhere, but at least you didn't lose it, And so I don't get rid of everything. But you also have to have the resources to do that. And I don't mean money. I mean, you need to have great help, great attention to the dogs. You have to be able to give them great lives. You have to give them, space to run. You have to give, all those things that the resources are necessary. And of course, it does take some money to do that.
How many dogs do you typically work with in your breeding program?
Like right now we have 20 adults and
Okay.
10 puppies. We have gotten up to 30 adults. I don't think you need that many. I personally think you could have a really great breeding program. And we don't keep a lot of dogs, except we keep 2 or 3 males. The rest are all bitches, just because that's how we're going to get to the next step, you know. And as you know better than I, when you do a breeding, you're not doing it just for that breeding. You're doing it hopefully for 2 or 3 prospective breeds you have in your mind ahead of you. And if that falls apart, then you have to take a step back, which I was just talking about, and reflect and make adjustments, and then go back forward, and then try. And maybe you'll try a different stud dog or something to capture those virtues. And you know, it's very important also, I think, in mentioning all this about the tools in your toolbox, is when you outcross, you know, do the research on the parents, grandparents, and even the great grandparents. You know, some dogs are just anomalies of where they came from, and some people see them and they go, that dog is so gorgeous, he's everything I want, I'm going to breed to him, and then they don't research that their mother,
where they came from.
well, that their mother and father are, excuse me for saying so, but butt ugly, and then they breed to it, and then they get the butt ugly, and they don't understand what happened there, unless their genes are so dominant. So again, I think when you outcross, you should breed to a dog who is also line bred, because what are you really trying to capture? Because if it's not line bred, you're not going to capture the virtues that are genetic there, as well as that are representing themselves phenotypically. So you need to, it needs to be a package: the phenotype, the gene type, and what they look like for at least 4 generations, and that they truly are producing those characteristics that you want to capture.
We made a big leap forward too, like the Nina Corte line, and we bred into that.
Mm-hmm. So when I said we based our stuff on the Renfield for your eyes only, he's talking about Nina Corte. That kennel was a really famous kennel in the 80s, 90s.
The 80s, yeah.
Yeah, and they were based on that same pedigree that I was talking about, the Renfield for your eyes only. And because she was and their whole family of dogs, Linda Canfield and Carol Esteris, and they were phenomenal breeders. They may have just been having a great deal of fortune, but they seemed to reproduce it in several generations and won several nationals and did quite well, and always had beautiful dogs. But yeah, but we also had a setback there because we did breed directly to one of their dogs, and to breed to one of their dogs was almost impossible. They didn't allow a lot of people to breed to their dogs, and so we bred a dog, and I think it might have had. I didn't love anything. There wasn't very many in the litter, and I didn't pursue it because I was getting good enough combinations with some of their breeding rather than all their breeding, and some of our breeding and not all of our breeding, you know, and intermingling. But anyway, what I was going to say was it is so important that they breed to a dog who's line bred and represents that genotype significantly. And then to intermingling it, you need to be sure to do it in a wise way, in the sense that you're not just throwing away everything you spent time capturing on giving it right back to the next generation, to your own dogs, because you need to keep mixing it up there. And so it does take a bit more breeding. You can breed yourself quicker away from what you want or quicker into what you want in just one breeding, but you never completely make a mistake, because as I said, those genes are always there. That's why I never throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I found it works. And we're doing that right now. And in one generation, we have 4 bitches who carry a characteristic that I'm not fond of, that I'm going to get. And we've had puppies and having puppies now, introducing our dogs more significantly back into those bloodlines, and the puppies are returning to what I liked more, with a bit of what they had to offer. And so, because I said, you know, it's just like creating a breed, isn't it? They say, you know, a breed doesn't become purebred for 3 generations, but you can make a breed in 3 generations. So I always look at breeding, even within my own breed, creating. It's not a new breed, but you're creating a new branch of that breed in 3 generations, and that intermingling only reaches to the point that you want it to in that third generation. So that's just kind of my ideas about some of those things that involve things in your toolbox.
Bill and Steve, can you describe for our audience what a Coventry Pembroke Welsh Corgi looks like?
Yeah, it looks like everybody else's that has nice ones. You only see our nice ones. It's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Because everybody says, all your dogs look alike. They're so beautiful. Well, thank you. But you only get to see the
good ones.
The good ones, right? So our breeding program is just like anybody else's, really. And can I say, within our breed, we have incredible breeders, unmatched. I mean, you and Shelty, you guys share the same thing. You have breeders in your breed that are still going to the specialties and to the national, that have been breeding for generations, who still bring those gorgeous dogs. So the same thing happens at our national. You cannot compete at our national unless you're bringing your very best. It's just incredible when you go there. You want to own a bunch of them. At all breed shows, it's not so much. We bring some really beautiful puppies to train at the shows, and it's interesting because the all breed judges a lot of times do recognize them, but they don't always. But some of them do. So they do. So we have to hold off with a lot of those puppies because we want to go there and train them and get them familiar with everything, but they finish too fast. So we can't save them for specialties and stuff. Well, I will tell you, we do have something that I don't love, but we have a gene in our dogs for fawn corgis, for lighter, not that beautiful red traditional color. But the all breed judges love it. They love that kind of blonde fawn color. And I don't mean so light it gives you, it distracts you. They're clearly marked, and they're not cream. They're just blonde. And so we do come up with that periodically. And interesting enough, our friends in England, the Penlyth people, who they have the top winning Pembroke Welsh Corgi in the history of the breed. They just regained. They had the record, and then another very old famous kennel beat their record, and now they've won it back with a dog out of ours, which was Champion Coventry's Esquire, who was, I'll talk about this other bitch later, Champion Coventry's Allure at Windstar. Those two, the sire and dam, were kind of blondish corgis, and so, but Allure was in the top 10 corgis of all time. She was just bumped out by another bitch of ours a couple of years ago, Good Vibrations, Dottie, and so she just phenomenally, just a gorgeous bitch. I'll send you pictures of her. In my mind's eye, an ideal Pembroke Welsh Corgi, which is obviously what I would try to strive for and breed towards. I believe this. So people talk about type all the time, and that is the standard. That's the generalization of what a Pembroke should look like. But when you get people, they dramatically insist you have to breed to type and it has to look typey and all that. Well, that's only their interpretation. And that's also a breeder's ability to choose what they believe their style. I call it style. It's a style of type. So we create our own style of type if we can. And we have moved a little bit away from that. We did have a real traditional one, as I mentioned, and we're breeding back towards it. And in that, I like them to be athletic. We're not as your breeding collies. Of course, we need a typey head, and there's many virtues in the head that are important to have for that. But it says that the three important things are an attractive headpiece. So we have to, when judging them, so we have to have an attractive headpiece. And that interpretation, when you go to the national, is broad for certain people. They have to be balanced. That's very important to me, that the front matches the rear, that they have a level top line, they have reach of neck because the scapula is at a 45-degree angle. They have a wrap. They stand under themselves. They don't stand wide out on the outside of their upper arms. They have bend to stifle. They have short hocks and long ribbing. So that's the balance. And it says our breed should be 40% longer than tall, from the withers to the set-on of the tail. So in that, that's not very long. We like them much longer, and so do the judges. And so if you measure a dog 40% longer than tall, in my educational thing, I show people what 40% is, and they're like really kind of shocked that it's that kind of a rectangle, a very short rectangle. But it is an interesting thing to ponder or to think about. So I think what happens is, and what I've seen genetically in our breed, that when we lengthen them, we don't lengthen them in rib. The ribs are genetically the same length if you have good length to start with, but where we lengthen them is in loin. And of course, when you flatten the pelvis, you kind of lengthen them a little bit more that way too. So those things can all happen. So our length is in the pelvis, but I don't, darker shades of brown, the eye to be preferred, and black to be basically considered not as desirable. So I don't want black eyes, but I want them to be as dark as brown as we possibly can get. But more, and the ears, a famous breeder, Michael's, what was Michael's name in Florida? Michael Save, who was became an AKC rep and did that. But he also in the early days, because our breed had small kitten ears in some cases, believe it or not, and they were rather short. They were Valhund looking, those kind of ears and that kind of proportion and length of leg too, by the way. And so Michael used to tell everybody who was coming to learn the breed, which that time is over. Now we have to slow people down on this, that the ears can never be too big and they can never be too long. Because we now have the ears too big and we have many that are too long because they lose strength in the loin from those long loins, and their ears have just gotten gigantic, which is more of a virtue of a cardigan, because the cardigan is a completely different gene pool. They're based on Dachshund breeding, and we're based on Spitz breeding. And so most people think we're we just kind of like split off and one kept tails and the color, but no, they're complete. I'm sure at one time in the UK, when they were in Cardiganshire and Pembrokeshire, they did cross the mountain and breed together on occasions, but they're not related. They're not basically related. So getting back to that, I do want an attractive headpiece, but for everyone, I'll settle for a more appropriate ear on the smaller side than most of these people want these big ears. I love a big, broad based ear rather than a narrow based ear. Those are harder to get up sometimes too. And we have too many long muzzles. It's just rampant in our breed, and it's not an awful thing because they're still attractive. But and almost when you see one of proper proportion, you almost like have to take a double take because it almost appears too short. And so we have an equilateral triangle from the tips of the ears to the nose. And in some place, I believe those eyes, even if it's the corners of the eyes, should hit that. They shouldn't be narrow set. We have a particular bloodline that we bred into that we did capture that trait, the virtues of them, but we also captured that trait from the narrower set eyes. I don't like that. And so we've worked on that. They have to have a balanced profile. And then they have to demonstrate that soundness through not only statically, but then kinetically. And it's very hard for, I think, people who start in an achondroplasty breed who have bad movers to understand what correct movement is ever. They need to go and watch a lot of other breeds and learn what that basis is and then keep applying it and thinking about it. And the other thing that I think is so important that we have difficulties with in our breed, and I completely understand why, because it says that our forelegs should be straight, and they can slightly turn out. Well, that turnout is nothing like a cardigan, so we'll maybe talk about that. But in trying to breed that straight leg with that wraparound humerus upper arm that sets underneath, then with straight legs, I think anatomy doesn't cooperate. You can't get that perfectly straight leg with a big wrap. And so they do have a little bit of that radius ulna being a little bit curved, which is okay with me. And it's interesting because we have some corgis where that chest drops all the way down into the front legs, and some of them who just stop right at the elbow. So what we end up, because of that, we keep trying to keep those good straight legs, but we also get straight upper arms. The scapula can still be angled, but the upper arm can still be a bit straight. And so then when they move, they don't move well. They move wide, or they toe in, or they do other things. Yeah, as Steve says, they have a restriction because they won't open all the way. But we bred into another bloodline, which I just love them. But he produced for us very angled scapulas and straight upper arm. Oh no, I'm sorry, the reverse. He produced very angled upper arms and straight shoulders. And so that gave you another issue in kinetic movement. Now in that, when they stood, you just thought, that is perfect. That is just heaven, you know? I mean, particularly if they had good length of neck, because of course, when the shoulders move forward on the neck, it shortens the neck, et cetera, et cetera. And depending on how much coat, just like you, I bet you're a phenomenal groomer, is that if you take it out where you need to take it out, it makes them appear to have more neck. And believe me, Corgis have a great deal of undercoat, so you can. Well, we can do a lot of sculpting with a poodle comb. We do no scissors, no scissoring, but we can take out hair undercoat where it needs to be combed out and leave it where it's an attribute rather than a fault. You know, creating outlines. So basically, I will tell you, you'll see pictures. So Champion Coventry's Good Vibration, a national specialty winner, one of the top 10 Pembroke Best in Show winning Pembroke Welsh Corgis in the history of the breed, and also one of the top 10 Best in Show winning specialties winners in the breed, along with the other Allure, who was in the top 10 Best in Show Corgis. If you looked at them, you'd say, everybody says, oh, your dogs all look alike. Well, in my mind, those two could not look more different.
Different, yeah.
One is just a beautiful interpretation of what I just love in a Corgi, and she's just gorgeous, and I just adore everything about her, and I'll send you pictures of her. And then Good Vibrations, Dottie is the antithesis of what the breed standard says they should look like. So makes me appreciate her. Her size, her form, her head. I just drool at what she is. So I told you, I based on our breeding program on some particular dogs, and so for that Renfield, for your eyes only, I suddenly looked at a Good Vibrations photograph and looked at her photograph, and I said, well, there it is. You know, that's just what you've worked for. I can get emotional about. Well, I already mentioned Champion Coventry Q, and so her fame was not in the whelping box. Her sister's was. But she, as I said, she became the top winning bitch in the history of the breed. She won the group at the Garden twice, et cetera, and was just a phenomenal bitch. Her sister was a Best in Show winner. We didn't show her a lot, and she became the third top producer in the history of our breed. From there, you know, you move forward, and you know, our success. I when I look back at it, it's phenomenal in the sense that I didn't really appreciate it as much as I saw other people would now, or that they did as we were coming along. And of course, in that, there's a lot of, jealousy. And so people don't talk as fondly about your dogs and you as they could. But anyway, we don't need to talk about that. But so we had dogs in interims. Well, let me just say this. In the last 20, this will be our 26th year of breeding. We've had the number one Corgi 19 times, either Best in Show or breed level or both. And many times we've also had the number two. And on several years, we've had 4 and 5 dogs in the top 10. And, you know, I don't want, the thing I always want to be is humble. I always try to be humble. But in saying these things, other breeders don't, because maybe they don't breed the numbers we do, you know. Maybe they don't have access. We've given ourselves we've developed a lot of access to, just like you did through your association with the people that you had as mentors. You met a lot of great people along the road. It gave you access to more information, more what you could do. And the other thing is, I always tell every breeder is, don't gauge your success on anyone else's, because then you're limiting your own. Take it wherever you want to take it. You know, there's a young breeder in Australian Shepherds who has also had some of our dogs, AJ Tavares, and he's much that way. He's creating what he's creating, and he's not limiting it by what he saw other people do or puts importance on what other people do, which I think is very good, you know, which is excellent. And so in that, stepping back to those dogs as we went through is, I mean, many people have one dog that is the number one dog for, you know, in the breed that year, or the number one herding dog for that matter. And we have had the number one herding dog a few times. And, and who gets to win the group at the Garden twice, let alone once? And who gets to win the group at the AKC show 3 times, let alone once? Who gets to win their national as many times as most any other breeder? Who gets to? You do. You could you position yourself, but you fall into it too. It's just like we talk about breeding. You put the genes in that alley, send them down the road, and you see what you get. And in that's what I could talk about many dogs in the interim, in between, but I will talk about something we did do. I went to South America to judge, and there was a bitch down there. It's that bitch in the picture right behind me. You can't really see her, but she's just gorgeous. She was the phenotype. She could have been one of our dogs, and it was so interesting, but she wasn't related. And when I saw her, I was just like in awe of how beautiful she was as a puppy. And I've learned as someone going and looking at other people's litters, you don't show your hand.
You don't get excited.
Because just like that friend of mine who visited us and said, Bill, I'll take her if you don't want her. You suddenly go, well, wait a minute, what am I not seeing? They know what they're talking about. I better take a second look here. So anyway, so they had her sister in the house kennel, as you might say. And so then I basically made a deal, and I got that bitch, champion Alan Cloud's Jacinta. And she was she gave us so much. She was a great introduction into our breeding program, as well as she was the number 1 Corgi for 2 years, multiple best in shows, specialty winner. And these people in South America were grateful. But the interesting thing, again, was that she primarily came from Ann Bowe's breeding. You might know her from the Northeast. Ann Bowe's, Heron's Way, famous kennel, phenomenal mentor, the most gracious, beautiful woman in the whole world. And then she got some of the bloodlines that I was going to capture. So this is kind of a way you can kind of breed, is that through Landian, who is also an incredible breeder. So they did some breeding together, but their dogs came from what I consider the greatest family of Pembroke Welsh Corgis in the world, and that's Aberley. And the reason I make them the greatest is because they may not always be the soundest. They may not always be absolutely. They seem to be pretty typey always, but they aren't always the soundest. But they do have some incredibly sound ones too. So don't get me wrong. But she just consistently for decades has produced that. And so I did research why she was able to do that and where she got those dogs, in my mind's research. And I did talk with her, and I have talked. She's a Gloria Woodward. She's a phenomenal lady also. And so I believe she got it from a woman that we met and have got to know, Mary Winsome of Cordac Corgis in the UK. And her greatest dogs came from these dogs, I think, and how she retained and is her mingling of these bloodlines along with others. But this was kind of her core, were these Cordac dogs from Mary Winsome. And Mary Winsome was way ahead of her time, in my opinion, in the dogs she bred. She's still alive. I don't know how. She's probably in her 90s. Just gorgeous dogs. But anyway, so this bitch we brought her home and gained a great deal from her, and also a stud dog we acquired from those people from a very similar pedigree, because as I mentioned, you need to, and without sending dogs all the way to Argentina, we acquired a dog from them so we could start mingling those bloodlines and capturing what they had to capture. And they gave us a great deal more type, in my opinion, because, and again, Good Vibrations, Dottie is out of champion Alan Claude's Tony Ash, who we independently made an ROMX for our club. And by the way, we have a few ROMX and ROMs, and which is another thing our club gives for X amount of champions for bitches. And I think we may have one male that's an ROM, or maybe
Johnny,
one that's an ROMX, but mostly they're bitches, because that's how we achieve what we do. Because although we do have good resources, we are also limited to a degree that we have to keep producing to keep changing the bar. So that's something I have to say to your breeders out there, is that I understand when you can only breed once or twice a year or once every 2 years, but you're not really moving the bar. And you may have something you have going for you right now, which hold on to, because as long as you can in those every 2 years you breed, and you probably will for 6, 8 years, but you're going to start, things are going to start changing at some point, very possibly for some of you. And then you're going to have to outcross, and there will be either something great you'll do or it'll be a downfall, and you'll have to regroup and get back to it. So when you're able to breed quicker, like we have, you either breed yourself towards something better quicker, and sometimes you breed yourselves away from it. Then you have to readjust, and you have to be willing to recognize it too, and not be kennel blind. And you and I had discussed earlier, I think it's a great topic, and I don't know when you'll like to discuss it, but about and Doug Johnson have you interviewed Doug Johnson? Okay, he's phenomenal about this, is about satellite breeders and finding people in your own breed, or even people out of your breed who may want a dog of your breed, who's willing to whelp, raise, show one dog or two dogs and be like a satellite breeder. I've done that to some degree. The new girl I mentioned, we're mentoring her, the one that's so successful in showing, and so she's going to work with us, and we're going to see what kind of breeder we can make her into too. And we work with a few, but very few, because, well, first of all,
Most of them don't have the tenacity for it.
yeah, because being a good breeder is not about producing that beautiful dog, but a lot of breeders have found out that you have to be a good trainer, you have to be a good exhibitor, and you have to know how to groom them to the nines, because you're going to compete against those people who do. And in that, you could have a really good dog, unless it's a really good judge. They may not identify it as such, because we have a lot of judges who only see good dogs who are made up to look like good dogs. And that's something I always tried as a judge, is to go that much deeper and further into trying to see and make sure that that one that wasn't presented as well wasn't the best one, because it's so easy for judges judging quick, to look at a dog and go, wow, that's awesome, that's beautiful. But they may be a fooler, a complete fooler. And I'm sure in your breed you can do that, and particularly in Shelties, I think you can do it, because that make and shape is just as important in Shelties as their head. Their heads are important too. But that typical Sheltie shape that's so incredibly beautiful can be so sculpted into them.
The Better Breeder Institute serves the purebred conservation dog breeding community. Purposeful dog breeders dedicated to the preservation and advancement of their breed. Our mission is to empower breeders through education, enabling them to transform their breeding programs and achieve their highest goals. As breeders ourselves, we honor your dedication, we celebrate your vision, and we provide you with the tools to overcome any challenge in your program. Our resources, digital courses, and services will set you apart, helping you achieve excellence in your breeding and business practices. At the Better Breeder Institute, we're committed to preserving the legacy and protecting the future of purebred dogs. We're shaping a future where conservation breeders are recognized as the best source for healthy, beautiful, and predictable puppies. Learn how to strengthen your breeding program at betterbreeder.org. Bill and Steve, if you could list a couple of the dogs that in your mind really embody Coventry.
All right, I already mentioned one, which was Champion Coventry's Allure at Windstar Valley. Now, she did produce several good dogs for us, and as I mentioned, our friends in the UK also wanted to breed into those lines, and I'll tell you a little bit about that further down the line. But Allie was something. If I could produce her over and over, I'd be incredibly happy. Her sister also was a phenomenal bitch. Just a Little Crush. Champion Coventry's Just a Little Crush. She was a national specialty winner, a multi-best in show winner, a multi-specialty winner, and they both were lovely. But Allure, Allie was just that whole embodiment of just for me, adequate length of leg, body style, etc., etc.
And she showed like a dream.
And she maybe not her first generations, but the grandchildren of her are really really done a lot and made their mark, and our children, because we bred on from them. And I'm just going to tell this story. This is an interesting story. So the people in the UK considered, they just loved Allure and they loved Etta. They're the two sisters, and they wanted a puppy out of them in the worst way. And so during that period, Etta was still being shown, and Allure we had bred, but we had one bitch that we were keeping and a dog we were running on. We sold the other males, and we had one other bitch who was a fluff. And I'm sure the Pinline people won't care because they tell this story already. So she was a fluff. And so, we can't show them. It's against the rules to show them. And really and truly, we're not even supposed to breed them in this country according to our PWCCA rules. But I think that's kind of washed down, because we can breed dogs that genetically can produce them because we have a marker for it, but we can't breed the ones who are. So it makes no sense. So I don't see the relevance in it. So they said, well, we'll take her. I said, okay, well, all right. And they said, oh, yeah. So they bred her first litter. And, it's not as easy in the UK to produce champions. And so they had 4 champions in the one litter. She had to be spayed. She had a pyometra or something went wrong. And so they had 4 champions, a Crufts winner, and et cetera, and have gone on to breed from them, from those kids, and really lovely ones. I can send you pictures of the ones that they got from that breeding. So I think it's so interesting that, those are people who are wise breeders, right? They understand genetics. They understand, the fluff gene's already there. We're already going to get fluffs. So whether we breed from a fluff or one that's not, if it has the marker, then it has the marker. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it still has all those other genes we want to capture. And so they're brilliant breeders in that sense. And they took her, and they had huge success from her. They didn't tell anybody at first, but they tell people now, because they don't think it's that relevant or that important. And so their most famous bitch was Champion Pinlias Shooting Star, who is the reason I was so drawn to them as breeders anyway, and why I decided to work with them. And she was and she won the group at Crufts. She's gorgeous. They've gone on to beat her record and every other record with a bitch by the name of Champion Pinlias. Oh my gosh, this is awful. She has the all-time record in the UK, which is really something. Bill Me Later?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
Hazel, they call her Hazel, yeah. And she is a phenomenal bitch, and particularly in their country, she looks stunning. And she is, like I said, the top winning CC winner in the history, and still going.
She's 172 so far.
I wouldn't be surprised if they really wanted to do it, they could go to 100, which no Corgi ever has, or a lot of dogs ever have in the UK. But at any rate, she's sired by Allure's full brother, that bitch. And so they're phenomenal breeders, and I'm so grateful to be involved with them and to have access to their friendship and knowledge, because they're incredible breeders. Chris and Nikki Blatz, that's their name. Her husband is a great guy, but has no interest in the dog. He loves dogs, but as like a lot of husbands, he has no real interest in the dogs, except as their loyal pets.
My fellow breeders, I'm excited to announce the Better Breeder Certification Program. This program recognizes purebred dog breeders dedicated to the preservation and advancement of their breed. The Better Breeder Institute certifies purposeful conservation breeders who produce healthy, beautiful, and predictable puppies, and who raise the bar with their ethics and breeding practices. Conservation dog breeders have long struggled to differentiate themselves from the backyard, for-profit, and commercial breeders in the minds of the general public. This is the only breeder certification program developed to help purebred puppy shoppers identify better breeders. This program directly supports breed health research and promotes the breeding of dogs that fulfill their breed standard. This is the first breeder merit program that truly supports efforts to breed a better dog. Learn more at betterbreeder.org.
I have no problems talking about my dog's faults, by the way, because why should we? I only show dogs and breed dogs for probably less than 5% of the population, because less than 5% of the population knows the the breed as well, just like you, knows the breed as our own breeds as well as we do. So all those naysayers who might be saying something else, who know very little about our breed, I don't get into the drama.
Don't care.
But if that other 5% say to me, Bill, you should look at this, or let's talk about this, I listen, because I think it's because just like you and I, when we go to an all breed show, excuse me, all breed dog judges, I am one of those, is that you don't know as much about my breed as I do. I can judge these in 5 minutes. It's going to take you a half an hour. And, and so I'm grateful you're here, and I'm glad you're here to learn. But, just like Mrs. Clark said, we're grateful we get to practice on the customers, And so that's what a lot of all breeder judges are doing. They're learning what we learned in the first decade. If we're lucky, if we're fortunate enough that they have the wherewithal and that they've come as a breeder from the trials and tribulations that we have to get to that point to actually go, okay, I want to do this right. And so I really have to understand this. And so I know, okay, so the other dog, I have to step back, who is Allure's mother. She was the top breeder owner handled Pembroke Welsh Corgi in the history of the breed, championed Coventry's Vanity Fair. And she was really a milestone for us too. Soundness, body style, portions, movement, needed to fix her head. And so, but she was a dog who brought us in line in as close a line breeding as we were doing at that time, and with where we could now jump off and start trying to capture other virtues through other dogs. And that Lena Corgi of Yolanda's breeding, that dog that we bred to, he really he did a lot for us. He gave me the opportunity to see what in one generation you'll get, and that's when I started seeing the combos of you either get him or her. Most generally, you don't get a mixture of it the first generation, and where we needed to go. So that bitch is also an incredible bitch. We had a bitch named, she was a specialty best in show winner, champion Coventry Swinging on a Star. That individually, in 2 or 3 litters, was our best generation we've ever had for consistency of what you would say, Bill, what is your type of Corgi? And we had them in numbers. I let so many go that could have done better things. Like, for instance, I had a brother who I sent to a woman in Canada. His name was Champion Coventry's V. He became the top winning Corgi for 2 years and was the #1 herding dog and won groups up there in best in shows and had a really good, but he wasn't as good as a dog of ours, Champion Coventry. What was Harry's registered name?
Wild About Harry.
Wild About Harry. Champion. He really did good for us. But now, you always have to step back because they say cancer is not genetic. But it seems in the short time we've been breeding Corgis, that it appears in certain bloodlines. And through that generation, we did get lymphoma in a few of our dogs. And Harry died at a very young age. 3. And he is behind all those. And his sister, who lived a long life, Champion Coventry Swinging on a Star, who was also a great producer of ours, who a lot of our really great dogs have come down from. In that, so, we got about 15, 18 years out, and we're consistently doing this. So now I got a little creative, and I started outcrossing a lot more. And it may have been, I may have got too big for my britches, because some of those outcrotches, like I said, this bitch behind us, breeding her, and it was phenomenal success. We looked like we were brilliant. We knew exactly what we were doing. But then, succumbing generations, we started like going, oh, it'll fix itself the next generation. It didn't. So now we're trying to fix it more logically. And can I say something else? And here I get off on another whole subject than you've been telling me I should stick to. But something I learned, because I told you, we have a home in California, we have a home here in Missouri. So I had started going Missouri, even though it was considered the puppy mill state of the U.S., has a phenomenal program now. And all of those things you see on TV, those things, for the HSUS, those things are 20, 30 years old. they are inspected regularly. They have to attend and keep up. They have to get so many units, educational units every year. And so the state puts on 3 and 4 educational programs through reproduction vets, through the care, through behavioralists, through all kinds of stuff. It's phenomenal. But in meeting those people, we bred ourselves into a corner. This way too is we started getting smaller litters. The mothers didn't conceive easily. They didn't carry through the gestation period. They didn't deliver easy, and they weren't great mothers. Well, no wonder. We were never selecting on that. We were only selecting on what they looked like. We would like take the one and go, because we were getting deeper and deeper into it with each breeding, because there'd always be one there that was beautiful. So we'd take it and go, oh, well, we'll get a bigger litter next time.
Yeah,
So
recently, less and less.
So recent, and so we hit the wall 3 and 4 years ago, where our bitches weren't conceiving, and if it looked like they had conceived, Becky did sonograms, and it looked like there'd be a couple. They reabsorb, or they deliver 1 or 2 dead puppies, or they only had litters of 3. And things can happen. Things are automatically out for our breed. So a fluff you can't show. So we do breed dogs with fluff genes. We do have a marker that we can breed away from it, and we do select on that sometimes. And also we have testicle problems because our breed is an English breed, and as you know, in England they allowed them to breed to show. I don't know. Simon Parsons would have to tell us. At some point, it was okay for them to have 1 testicle. They were able to obtain their championships. So we have a lot of dogs with 1 testicle. And so that gets rid of a lot of dogs. So you may not have even a choice, but then you may only have 1 choice. And so in that, 2 years ago, we did everything. We went to all
health tests.
Hutchison, we talked to him, Marty Greer, Dr. Williams has lots of experience, tried to figure out what we were doing wrong. If it was because when they say that if you line breed or inbreed too closely, you end up with smaller litters. So I didn't find that to be true, because when I would line or inbreed, I'd get big litters, mothers that are good. I would outcross, I'd get small litters, mothers that were awful. So I think it all depends on the genetic ability or what you've been breeding on. So in that, we had to make a choice. So I had to get rid, when I say rid of, took out of the breeding program all those bitches who weren't conceiving, who were gorgeous, who were like best in show winners, who were specialty winners, winners bitch or, specialties, and were finishing at special, that were just beautiful. And we had to take them out of the gene pool, because you're much better off being able to select from 7 puppies and getting a good one than you are from 3 to none.
Or 2.
Yeah. So guess what? It's working. It's working. So I look back and I said, okay, I'm going to start with the great grandmothers. Oh yeah, they had big litters. They conceived. They took it, grandmother, mother, them. And so now we're breeding those bitches, and we're having good sized litters again. And so that's just something for breeders to think about, because we think too much about what we're breeding on for phenotyping as far as glamour, attractiveness, soundness of running gear, and that we don't stop to think about what those reproduction things are doing. So it is something for everybody to think about. And also then you add all of the frozen semen, fresh chilled semen, which is going to cut back on numbers naturally. And those conception rates and everything are going to cut you back also. So maybe if you have the resources, be like we used to and drive a day to 2 days to get to that stud dog, get a hotel room and breed to it directly, rather than relying on frozen or fresh chilled semen, because you're guaranteed to have more puppies. And once again, those good mothers are worth their weight in gold. Can I tell you, our breed is a big breed that a lot of people schedule C-sections. And I think a lot of people do that now. So we don't even know which ones will deliver on their own and which ones won't. And so in that, we do C-sections. And then what do? We supplement our puppies, bottle feed them to keep them really too plump, probably, instead of letting them just have their mother keep them at a scale that's good. But maybe the first day or so the mother doesn't have enough milk, so we are bottle feeding. But if we keep bottle feeding for 10 days, basically. And, I used to give this philosophy thing that it was a good human canine bonding thing and that they would remember it forever. And they do, but I don't know how important it really is. And it gives you a time to neurologically stimulate them at that age when they're puppies in the whelping box and that sort of thing, which is really good, I believe. All those things play into it that we don't think about when thinking about reproduction all the time, which I think a lot of people should think more of, because it's not a problem till it is, in that. So other good dogs, I mentioned 3 bitches. And like I said, I bet I'm missing some, because I will tell you, Etta, the national specialty winner, champion, just a little crush, who is a full sister to Allie, champion Coventry's Allure. She did produce us, she had 1 litter, and she had a bitch that was just beautiful that we're breeding on from, who also had big litters. She was best in sweepstakes at our national and finished at specialties. She's lovely. And then she had a brother who also finished at specialties, and his name was, we call him Edison. He was Etta's son, so we call him Edison. And he is named Champion Coventry's. It was an Etta James song, and I can't think of the name of it right now. But we're breeding back to him too, also, and he's doing great stuff for us. So I'm glad to have him available. And it doesn't mean we won't outcross or outbreed, because we are breeding into. We did just breed to another dog that we're going to see what we get from him. That's not related. Now, as far as males go, I mentioned Champion Coventry's No Greater Love. He is probably the second top producing. Champion Talleyrand's No Greater Love is probably the second top producing stud dog in the history of the breed. He became that. We bred to him early on, and he was a phenomenal producer. We did acquire this dog who's in almost all of our pedigrees now, who's related to that bitch behind us, Champion Alan Claude's Tony Ash, when we spoke earlier, when we said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So when you sell somebody a beautiful dog and they say, all right, I got this now, and I'm going to be a huge, I always tell anybody who gets a dog from us, the only reason you're getting this dog from us is because I know you will always give it a wonderful home. That's the most important thing to me. But secondly, if you want to learn from us, we're here to teach you and help you with this, because in my perspective, you need us a whole lot more than we need you. So if we ever fall out, I'm fine for you going your own way. And if you are successful, then that means we did a good job mentoring you. But if you fall out with us and go your own way, they're going to screw it up. And they do. You just like go, what the heck do they think they're doing? But it's okay. And sometimes, usually that first generation, they have some success. But if they're not following the rule book, the second generation starts falling apart, and then it's downhill from there. So I really enjoy working with people who are passionate and dedicated. And we've had Jody Gerling. She is not really a breeder. She really loves corgis, and she loves to handle. I think she's shown 3 best in show winners for us and she was relatively new. And she, for somebody who's only in it, I think she's only been showing corgis, I don't know, 5-6 years.
Yeah,
and she's shown 3 best,
10 years.
Maybe 10 years. 3 best in show winners. That's pretty great. And she does she's an incredible groomer. She shows them really well, and is that person who really takes them to the nth degree. All right, so I mentioned Tony Ash and No Greater Love. So this is an interesting thing. I consider it interesting. I should always say interesting to me. So there's a woman named Lisa Coit. She is an incredible breeder. And so we've been introducing her dogs because it's a look I like. It's different from ours, but it's fuller, rounder, which I like. When I say rounder, you probably understand that in body shape, because it's more angular. It's not, straight, and it's full ribbed and has big hips and all that sort of stuff. And her heads are different than ours, but I find them attractive. And she has some of those great big ears, big broad-based ears. And but her dogs are gorgeous. But anyway, we have that bloodline now, and with some of this, it's going to be interesting, because now I'm working with basically 3 different genetic families, and so these that are already done and that have been bred together and have bred maybe the second gen. I am introducing this third group of dogs. Lisa is so humble and she is so incredible. Her kennel name is Rosewood. She even showed Shelties in the West Coast. Your wife might know her.
50 years ago.
Yeah. Her name was Lisa McGuire then. And so anyway, Lisa, she's another one. So she's one of two. I mentioned Aberley. Lisa consistently for 50 years has produced these gorgeous dogs who, you'll go to your national, right? And there'll be somebody there every year that goes reserve winner's bitch, goes select bitch, who goes best in sweeps, but maybe never wins the big prize. But every year, and I'm not saying Lisa's won the big prize plenty, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying those are the breeders that I admire so much that people need
Consistency.
They have consistency. They've created a definite family, a look of dogs, and they are always in there with the best ones. Maybe they're not making it always peeking through to that ultimate point, but they're always there. I admire those breeders a great deal because they're sticking to their guns. They're breeding what they think is gorgeous. And another breeder like that is I've already mentioned her, Yolanda Langer. She's also a breeder like that. She's a small scale breeder, breeds consistency, and has beautiful dogs. So, and we have bred into her dogs too. And I wish the reason we don't have more of her dogs or have had more of her dogs is because it's, sometimes it's just an inappropriate time. The weather's bad. You can't get semen. She's out of town or something. So that's one of the reasons for that. And so there you go. And yeah, so what I'm saying is I have like three kind of families of dogs I'm working with,
Within our own.
within our own, they're all ours, but I have these introductions and I have them going side by side because you're not going to interbreed them. You would if you didn't have the resources to keep the dogs for a time, if you could only keep, a few dogs and you didn't, but we have the resources to keep them. And so in that, here we go. I'm like a kid in a candy store. So I judged our national 2 years ago, bitches at our national, and my winner's bitch. I loved all three of my contenders for winner's bitch. They were just gorgeous. But my winner's bitch ended up being from not Russia. She's from she's from Russia. Yeah, she's from Russia. But the people live also in Switzerland, and so which I don't know that a foreign dog in literally decades has won at our national prize like that. Well, she's gorgeous. I love her. And I loved hearing this because my mentor, Tim Mathieson, he said, it looked like it could have came out of your kennel. He says, when I looked at her, I just went, well, it looks like one of Bill's dogs, And I said, so the phenotype was there, but she's not associated with us genetically. But she has beautiful dogs in her pedigree, beautiful dogs, because as you know, the Russians somehow get a hold of all those pedigrees and they intermingle them and they do great stuff with them because of the numbers they do. Of course, we don't see many of them right now because of the war in Ukraine. But this bitch, because she was registered in Switzerland, I acquired her. Now, that's going to be another fourth sidebar that I'm going to work on, moving forward and seeing what happens with. But she, my dedication to that national was I was going to find the one, and my interpretation of style, two type, that was within size because our dogs are getting too big, way too big. And she was just lovely that way. And the girl had her trained to perfection, which doesn't hurt anything, as you well know. And both of the other two bitches that were in contention, anybody would love owning them. They were just beautiful bitches. And one of them was Lisa Coit's. And so anyway, in that where I was talking about, not everybody. See, I am so blessed, and I'm going to mention some people. So some people in the beginning of our goal to breed dogs, we met, and they got a dog from us. She had cancer, and I never knew. I didn't really know that. I did later, and she said, and she did tell us later on when she's getting the dog, and she thought we were never going to give her a dog because she had cancer. Anyway, they became such really great friends and patrons to our breeding program, which has always helped us diversify, show those dogs that we wouldn't have been able to as extensively as we have, and those sort of things. Deborah Salo and Kevin Foist, and they also. She's a phenomenal trainer, and she's trained some of our best. She trained
Howdy.
Dottie, and she trained her to perfection. That
Carrie.
and Carrie, the tri-bitch swinging on a star, etc., etc. She's a phenomenal trainer, and so I could just take them in the ring, and it was like I looked like I was like Andy Linton with a Doberman. It's like Andy's so brilliant about showing dogs. He takes those trained dogs that he can just move in with them. I did the same. Once you've shown a dog for a while, you can just move your body and they move theirs because they know that's what they're supposed to do. And so anyway, Deborah Salo, I wanted to mention them, and Kevin Foist, and they're still with us today. We talk to them every day. We spoke with them yesterday, and just incredible people who, like I said, are just as important and phenomenal in our breeding program as any one of us, because they play a different role, and their role is just as important, if not more important. And so in that, they Deborah cones a lot of our dogs, and not because she wants to, just because we like keeping her involved and interested, right? And Kevin, I need to cone a couple with right now because he's never really cared. He never really said anything, but I think he would enjoy it. We had a young dog 2 years ago, just a little over a year old. We took him out. He finished at a specialty. He's just a beautiful dog. Champion. Coventry's breaking every rule. And we took him out his second weekend as a specialty, and he won 2 back-to-back best in shows. And we haven't shown him very much at all. And we probably won't, because he's their pet, and they love their dogs just to stay at home. They don't have to show them, and that's much like once you become established breeders like Naomi and the Cones, and like the Helmings. What incredible breeders. They're Newfoundland Portuguese water dog breeders. And of course, he's gone now, but some of the best breeders, and I consider those kind of people mentors, because I try to fashion myself after some of the things they do. And volume was not a problem with them, having large families of dogs and breeding from them, and having interaction with other people. And so in that, I just they've given us that resource also to be able to really do a lot, because as you know, breeding dogs is not cheap. Showing dogs is even more expensive. Yeah, and particularly if you show them at any national level, it's very expensive. And in that, I'd also like to mention a handler that we had for a decade, but she's getting ready to come back, is Jenny Warnall. And she's just an incredible exhibitor, trainer, groomer, loves corgis. She's going to get a pet from it. Not a pet. It's going to be a show dog, but it's a pet for her in her house, and her daughter. And she's just the best. And she did so much with our dogs. I'm so grateful to her. And I just
showed allure.
Yeah, she showed allure. And so in that, and no offense, Jenny, but that was Jenny's first corgi. So you know how it is being a famous or relatively famous terrier, maybe toy handler, and going into the herding group. The herding group people all go, well, who the hell is this? Right? Yeah, because even though we have our, just like you, just like me, we're basically herding dog people. So the people on the other side of the fence, we don't really know them all. We do, because we're in it. You know what I mean? But a lot of them don't. They come along one breed at a time. They grow up into herding group, and then they're like, so who are these other people? And so Jenny showed allure, and I think and I say no offense to Jenny, because no one could have shown her better. Her record stands on its own for Jenny being the first time she ever showed a corgi, and the record she had with not even being known, And so I'm grateful to her, and I'm so hopefully wish now that she's coming back that we will have her with another dog in the next year or two. That because I love the breeding part, and I love going out and winning that occasional specialty or winning that occasional best in show with a dog. But I don't want to. That is grueling work, putting records on dogs, you know. And so there is one record in our breed that we don't have. Is that I'd love to get back, which a wonderful guy, Sam Lawrence, you might have known him. He sponsored a dog, champion hummingbirds keeping up appearances, bred by Carrie Chase, and that dog now holds the all-time record. I think he has 75 best in shows, I believe it is, and we have 71 with BB. And so, yeah, that's one record I'd like to get. But if I don't, I'll die happy because I've had, and the journey, as they say, is the most important part. And I've had such fun. And that's another thing. When I go out on my deck, because we have a two-story house here in our living quarters, our house is basically on the second story with a deck all the way, and we have huge paddocks, and the dogs are running in the paddocks. Nothing brings me more joy than that picture. I would rather do that than go and watch one of my dogs win. But I mean, not rather. I would just as much do that than watch one of my dogs win a best in show. Now, winning a national, that might be another story. I'd rather go and watch him win a national. That'd be pretty awesome. And I need to mention one more person, Amy Spear. She's our kennel manager, and she loves the dogs more than any of us. She takes impeccable care. She's so dynamic in that, and she shows us every day who we should be, because she's just incredible about the care.
We couldn't do it without her.
Yeah.
Elevate your breeding program with Easy Whelp Solutions. Easy Whelp's innovative modular whelping boxes set a new standard for premium design and performance. Their washable, eco-friendly pads are more absorbent than the competition, keeping your whelping area clean and hygienic. And Easy Whelp Heat Combo ensures your puppies stay warm and healthy. Easy Whelp also carries a full line of whelping products, including box liners, feeding stations, whelping bundles, and video monitoring systems. Raise the bar in your breeding program. Visit easywhelp.com today. Bill and Steve, current breeders are facing a lot of new challenges today. They're just being fewer breeders, contracting gene pools, the loss of major bloodlines. You mentioned all of the different people that have played a part in your breeding program. You obviously have a very good sized breeding program, but as breeders now and into the future are having these new challenges, can you talk about that importance about having partner breeders in your program and not just breeding on your own island?
You're absolutely right. And all they need to do is talk to or listen to a podcast. Probably, I didn't listen to Doug's podcast. I will go and listen to it. Doug Johnson, because I bet he spoke a lot about this, I would suspect, because he's all about it. And so in as much as you have a bloodline and you're deserving of protecting it, but protect it in the right ways. Don't protect it in selfish ways, which we do have people who do that. And in that, do it wisely and with dignity and respect for your dogs, but do try to share with other people. And in that, if you're only able to move your bar, I think honestly, Matt, a lot of people are happy with only breeding once every 2 years, and that's why they hold it up as a great badge of courage or whatever of honor, because that's what they do and that's what they can do. What we do need to get away from, though, is demeaning those people who have the resources, who do breed like. I mean, who would demean the Cones, for their success and how they do it and how they've done it? You can't. And so if there are people in your breed like them that are doing it successfully and have the resources to care for the dogs, place them very well. And by the way, we take any dog back for any reason at any time. And we've gotten them back as old as 12 and 13 years old because the people died and the kids didn't want them, et cetera. But we need to work together more. And in that, you know what? I have no problems telling people the genetic issues our dogs have. I have no reason to hide them because guess what? They don't belong to me. They belong to the future and they belong to the past because everybody has them.
At this point in your breeding career, what do you view as the most significant challenge for purebred dogs?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. And it also relates to what we were just talking about. Okay, so just real quick, I'm going to hit that one last one you said. So we need to have satellite breeders. You need to work with people, new people, mentor them, bring them on board, find out about them, trust them enough to work with them, and maybe share your breeding program and go on from there. Don't wait until you find the one ideal person that's already successful and you're going to share things because they're already in it, they're hooked, but you can work with those people too. That's fine. But try to involve new and great talent. And that's what I found with both three of the women that I'm working with. One of them has had to take a step back. She's had children, Felicia, but Audrey and Jody, they'll know who they are phenomenal people that we've been working with and others to some degree. But anyway, so you do need satellite breeders. You do need to expand on that gene pool because you're just going to spin your wheels. But like I said, a lot of people are happy just being in that groove, in that success mode. And look how many perpetual breeders there are who have no success but just stay there, and they're happy with maybe finishing a dog after a long period of time, and all of that, and that's okay. That's okay. But I think even I learned something. Every time I set out to teach someone something, I always learn something. And so there's another reason to mentor someone. And not only do you learn something, but you remember things that you had forgotten from 30 years before or 40 years before. Yeah. So then you wanted me to take this to the most important thing. All right. So I mentioned to you perhaps that I'm a board member of the National Animal Interest Alliance. And so in large populated places or in progressive, well, I'll leave out the word progressive, in states that are moving along and they're heavily populated, it seems they're anti-breeding, they're anti-dog, not so much of people owning them, but they don't want them to be bred because I get it to some extent, and I can really talk to you about shelter numbers because Patty Strand, the head of the NAIA and a past AKC board member, accumulates all these numbers. Less than 4% of all dogs in shelters are actual identifiable purebreds. The rest are all mixed. Now they give them breeds and say they're breeds, and these numbers are by their own definition that she's accumulated. So it's not like us just making this up and saying it. And so she's done extensive research on this. And so in that, our dogs don't end up in the pound. If one of my dogs ended up in the pound, I would literally get in my car and drive to Rhode Island and get it. You know what I mean? First of all, I would never want it there. And secondly, I wouldn't want anybody to know my dog ever ended up in a pound. That would just be awful. So I think that's why we take the time to place them and we tell them under any circumstance, you can't keep this dog. We should be your first call, and because we'll make arrangements to come and get your dog, come and get the dog, or do whatever is necessary. And so what's wrong with the biggest thing is wrong is, the animal rights movement as opposed to the animal welfare movement. The animal welfare movement is doing great things. The animal rights movement is not doing. They want to eliminate everything. As you might know or might not know, it's been a few years, but we fought AB 1634 in the state of California. It was rolling along, and if we hadn't intervened, it was the mandatory spaying and neutering of every dog and cat in the state of California. What would that do? Yeah, I mean, and the NAI was there. The AKC PAC came also, but what really did it was the grassroots effort that we would show up at Sacramento and legislate to those, and they know nothing about dog breeding. It's just like somebody coming to you and I and saying, okay, we're going to do brain surgery today. I'm telling you, it's the same thing. They were saying, well, how many breeding couples do you keep? we don't keep breeding couples. What are you talking about? And I'm like, we don't tell them about frozen scene, because if we do, that's going to be another whole ball of wax. So I'm just like, and they didn't understand. But I'll tell you, if you when you do legislate, and so we do and have gone to DC over certain legislative things and worked, explained to the legislators what devastation this would have on many things, and to good dog breeding. They seem to understand, but they have no understanding initially. So your main scope when you meet with a legislator is explaining what you do right, because we are the good guys, and how we do it, and that then of course there are legislators. There are good legislators and there are bad legislators. And so we hope to be the example of good breeders. And so we want you to know this is how we do it. And if you impose this, you restrict all breeders, the good ones and the bad ones. So can't we write this bill so it will better represent how we want to move forward with good breeders, letting them do what they do well and stopping the bad ones? And legislators are really pretty much willing to listen, unless they have a good friend who is an animal rights person, and then they're unrealistic. And I learned in psychology that you can't change someone's mind after they've made it up. They'll consider it defensive if you challenge them on what they already believe. So you either have to meet with somebody who doesn't have a clear understanding and tell them about it, and then they evolve, educate them, and they evolve, or you walk out the door and go to the next one because you're wasting your time. And so, and you learn who to identify and not identify. But my point is, when there's a bill in your state, your county, or in your city, you need to go and try to meet with those legislators in a calm, logical way and tell them who you are and how this bill will impede good dog breeding success and good dog ownership. And it seems to work. Patty Strand has a gift for doing it, and she's done really, really great things. So I really recommend that you try to fight animal rights. There's really good animal welfare. We have many good animal welfare bill laws on the books and regulations that if we just follow those, we'll be doing great. And but beyond that, there's a good book, and maybe you've read it. It's called the new knowledge. Oh no, advanced. I got it. Advanced Labrador breeding. You can go online. You can buy it. The first one that comes up says it's $600, but if you go for the new version, advanced, and it's by a woman in England. Anyway, it's very interesting, and it can help you. It can help me. It can help all those new breeders that find themselves stuck in a plan, because she talks about the graduation of breeders and how they evolve and get stuck and can't go forward. And it's really good. Advanced Labrador breeding. There's a new name for it, and I can't remember if I get it confused with. And so it's really good, and it's good for anybody to read who feels like they're stuck. They may not even realize they're stuck, just like I don't realize I'm stuck initially in some things. It may take me 2 generations to go, I'm stuck. This will help keep you from that happening. So that's another thing that I think would be really good for your listeners is to get that. Mrs. Clark always recommended the book, yeah, and so that's really a good book. And then the other thing is as I mentioned, never compare yourself to another breeder. Always do it your way, and because they may limit you in the way that you can do it best, or they may limit you to reaching your outer limits because you're just matching theirs. And I find the most successful breeders are very individual, meaning they do their own thing, but they cooperatively work with other people. They have no problems introducing other bloodlines. They have no problems sharing with other people, and but they have a vision of their own, and they're not swayed by going to a national and everybody's breeding to that dog, or look at that dog, it's so beautiful, I'm going to breed to that one. Everybody's talking about breeding to it, so I'm going to breed to it. They just plot, for lack of a better word, they plot along at their own rate, their own success level, and they keep moving the bar forward with each generation, and they keep reproducing what they believe is their style of type and arriving there one day. I hope, and so, yeah. So and so just like I mentioned before too, is people say, well, how do your dogs all look alike? And as I said, they don't. You only see the good ones, and so that's another thing you have to be aware of. And and I kick myself in the bottom because the last couple years I haven't taken our best ones. I finished the class ones, and I should have saved them for and so I'm going to save them for the national. Now I don't care what anyone says. It's I'm going to save them and take them there and not finish them because everybody says, oh, they could break their leg. They could this could happen, that could happen.
So, Bill and Steve, as you think back over your journey in corgis, what are you most proud of?
Breeding happy, healthy dogs that can go, because the most important thing, no matter what they're going to do in the show ring, is that they can go into a family and they can have long, happy lives. And it's just like we sent a puppy, and the guy drove all the way here. He lives in California and got a puppy recently for his kids for Christmas. And I know a lot of people say, oh, shouldn't sell dogs. Well, they planned on getting a dog for a long time. They didn't tell their 3 kids. And so he came and got it. I mean, him driving all this way is a testament to one thing, right? And then the dog goes there. So this is a testament to good. The puppy is only 4 months old. I'm telling you, I would have ran out of the house with the screaming, yelling, squeals, hopping around, running around in circles these kids did when they saw this pup that they got a puppy. They were so elated. It was the best. It was the best video ever. But I kept thinking, wait a minute, what about the puppy? And the puppy's just like vibrating, shaking, looking at them like, what's going on? And so I was so, I just thought, there you go. That's why you breed for good temperaments. I was just talking to, but I think that my most favorite thing are those intimate moments, and this can be with the dog not even being purebred, but those intimate moments you share with your own dogs. That's my most happiest, proudest moments. That they already know what you're thinking before you're thinking it. Because you've lived with them. They're like part of your family, and they're always so eager to please, and they're always so incredibly intuitive. And all those things that you just I think I just love dogs that are like that. So that pertains to temperament and behavior. And so I do like that too. I do think that's one of the best things. I mean, as far as winning, like I said, as winning goes, I don't really even venture to say we're probably the most winningest Pembroke Welsh Corgi family of dogs in American history. And I mean, there was Marjorie Butcher, but I don't know all of her records or what her records were. But it was harder to win with a Corgi in those days because the working group and herding group were all the same. But anyway, so in that, I don't find winning as important as other people might consider it in making their dogs good. You and I can go to a dog show, and like I said, we can judge the dogs in 5 minutes. It's going to take them 30 minutes. And in that, we'll be more exact, and we can sum it up in minutes. By the way, one of the most important things that a breeder, tools that they should have, and that is the ability to recognize and to gather memories about all of those bloodlines and those dogs that they've seen over generations, because that will serve you so well, and to be just the best observer you possibly can be, and to learn to have a picture in your eye of the style, like you've asked, what is the style of type that you create, or what is type? They should start there, and say what in my mind eye is type, and be able to take it from there, and to grow from there, and to visualize that, and not just accept what they get each time, but use it as a stepping stone to the next great thing they're going to do. And I just think great observers, so important. And knowledge, understand anatomy about your breed. Understand your breed is so specific. Collies are so different from Shelties. Shelties are so different from Corgis, et cetera, et cetera. They move differently. They have different body language. They are expected to do that. And so learn that inside and out. and be a great observer. You know, all the breeds, corgis, but a lot of the breeds are becoming homogenized, meaning they're all so intermingled. They all look similar now, and the good ones are always good. They're great, and there's separations. But in that homogenization of them, we end up not seeing the differences in different people's bloodlines until you go to a specialty or go to the national, and then you can say, I can guess what that breeding is. I used to at all breed shows have a new exhibitor show to me, and after I judged, I tell them, "Oh, your dog's beautiful. I bet your dog has Aberley breeding in its background." And they look at me and they go, "No, I don't think so." So they go home. I end up seeing them the next day. They bring their pedigree. How did you know? Look here in the fourth, fifth, and sixth generation, it's full of this. I said, because that's what your dog looks like, you know. And so so as a good observer, you need to be able to do that.
To that aspiring breeder that's listening to the Coventry story today, if there was one thing you'd hope they take away from your story that would help them in their own journey, what would it be?
So I have a friend. Her name's Faye Strauss. She's a famous Doberman person. And I learned from her. So when you walk up to someone and you get a no, or you breed a litter and it's not what you want, or you are stopped somehow, you walk right around that and you keep going. Because with that knowledge of your failure, possible failure, because I mean, when I say walking around somebody, just because they say no doesn't mean you're not going to obtain what you're going to get. Because you failed in breeding one time, that's the knowledge, that's the experience. You know, just like I said, all of this, you're Mendelssohn, you're the mad scientist, you're the geneticist, you're putting this together, and you should learn. And if you aren't learning from every breeding, then you're not a dog breeder. You should go on and put puzzles together or something. You know, so you're not a dog breeder because you need to learn something from every breeding. You know, you need to learn something from every dog that comes into your house. You know, you need to be able to identify those things. I find it interesting, you know, and people I work with also. Um, you mentioned to them, do you see the behavior that dog is giving that dog? They don't see it. They don't see that they're giving this, you know, they're the dominant dog and the house, and they're giving that dog the glance, and you can tell that dog's not going in 10 feet of them until they get to know them, or that dog can put a stop to a dog fight. You know, if somebody starts fighting, they just run over there and everybody, okay, you know, or something like that. I'm just saying, or that their body language, whatever their body language is, that's something you have to learn. It's not really taught to you. You know, it's from years of being around dogs, and that comes into the training, and that's why I'm grateful. As I mentioned early on, I had great experiences with one of the greatest behavioralists, that fellow who trained all the Walt Disney animals, and trainer. And I learned so much about dog behavior and about character and training and bulletproof behaviors and talent that way. And you know, and isn't that so important, as I've mentioned already, is all those things are going to serve you as a dog breeder. You know, I as a dog handler, as I mentioned, groomed schnauzers for over a decade. It taught me great things about a different type of hair, but about dealing with hair. And hair has memory. And I always tell all the people who are going to show their corgi, you need, for 3 weeks before the dog show, you need to bathe it once a week, comb it out, do its nails, trim its feet, and make sure it looks like that day you're going to show it. Go out and work with it. Because you know what? There's people that are already at the dog show 3 weeks before you, showing their dogs, and they look, when you get there, yours is going to look like yours is only 1 week out if you're not doing that. And theirs is going to look like 4 weeks out. And you're not going to have the edge. And so you always want to give yourself the edge. So always be a good trainer, a good exhibitor, and a good sport, of course, and an excellent groomer. And those things will serve you. And be a behavioralist in your breeding program. And be the best observer you possibly can be. I think those are the things that have served us the best overall.
Is there a breeder you'd like to see featured on the Better Breeder Chronicles? Then go to betterbreeder.org/nominate to let us know. We are looking for master breeders, whether they are highly acclaimed or they work quietly in anonymity to move their breed forward. Better Breeder Chronicles puts those individuals on their rightful pedestal and shares their story with the purebred dog world. Nominate your most respected breeder today. Go to betterbreeder.org /nominate. And finally, after your breeding days are done, how do you want breed history to remember Coventry Pembroke Welsh Corgis?
I don't think they will. I don't think it's all that important that they'll remember me, but perhaps when they scroll across a photograph like me, like when I do, and I go, oh my God, look at that. That is so gorgeous. Well, who is that, and why does it exist? Who was it then who brought this about, and how did this happen? And this is like so before its time. Like I mentioned, Mary Winsome, who bred 50 years ago, 60 years ago, she was breeding, maybe even longer. And she had the most beautiful dogs, and they were before their times. And when I would go through, our club has the league book in England, and we also have our own book and yearbook. And so they have pictures of the dogs, and so you scan through it and you go, oh my gosh, look at that. That doesn't even look like it's the same breed. It's so good, I would like people to be scrolling through the book or something and go, oh my God, look how beautiful that is. That's gorgeous. And what's that? Oh, that was Coventry. They must have had nice dogs at some point. I think about that in my mind sometimes because I'm 70 and you're not going to live forever. And I don't expect to live forever. I just expect to live fully. And in that, I think, well, how will because I'm not a big one. I have a woman right now who says we got to write a book. We've got to make we got to put all your dogs into a photographic thing on the computer that we can scroll through and see your dogs in generations to come. But I have every league book from
48.
Did they 46?
Ours.
Yeah, no, we have but from the very beginning. And it's interesting. They're not pertinent really to what I'm doing today at all, but they're fun to look at. And so I have them, and you do go through them, and then you get to a point where then they do affect your breeding program. You start seeing dogs that are in the background that you can identify with, and that sort of thing, and understand more about where your dogs have come from and what they look like, and who the people who brought them to this point. And the other thing is these breeders. I am not. I have the opportunity now to be like an artist, and because breeding dogs is more of an art form than a science. And so I have the opportunity to create my own art form and present it out there. But you know what? I wouldn't have that opportunity if it wasn't for the mentors I had, and if it wasn't for the people who bred those beautiful dogs before me. Because the blood that runs through and the genes that run through them are their genes. They don't belong to me. And so that's what I hope to do, is pass it on to the next generation and have someone, and they're out there, people say they aren't, but they're out there that are just as passionate as we are about it as they are as well. And so I think that's very important. So mentors. So we didn't really hit on that much, but every person that looks for a mentor, I have to tell you, everybody just because someone comes to you and they want to be mentored, the mentoree or you are not going to choose them necessarily. It's a sad thing, but it's true. And so you have to hook up with that person you have chemistry with, and you may recognize them, you may not recognize them. And in that, it could be a simple thing why I choose someone. It's usually because they're passionate, and they're a young man from France spent 5 years trying to get a dog from us. I finally went to France and judged their national, and he was there, and I spoke with him, and I finally decided to send him the dog. And in the first year, his dog's the #1 Corgi in France now. And he was passionate. He wanted to learn. He was so interested. Same thing with Audrey, the girl who has the #1 Corgi right now, who I said won 3 best in shows and 7 specialties just this year in her first complete year of showing. I saw her at a dog show. It's a cute story, and I'm sorry for going on about it, but I chose her because I watched her that day, and I watched her groom her dog. She did it she had a Corgi. I'm sorry, Audrey. The dog isn't the best dog in the world, but she groomed it to perfection.
Trained it perfectly.
She trained it, and she presented herself in it so well she looked like she shined out there among all those people who like maybe been doing it for 40 or 50 years. So I actually, with the bit she has now, I went up to her. Oh, she was walking around. She said, "Hi," she said, "Yeah, you have corgis, And I said, "Yeah." And so I said, "Are you interested in another corgi?" I was thinking, this girl has talent. I want to work with her. And she told me, "Oh yeah, this is my, I got this dog, and this is my first dog." And I said, "That is awesome." And so she said, "Oh yeah, I'd be interested." And she said, "But so I said, well, we'll share it, and we'll basically own the first generation. You can get a dog from us, but we'll own its first generation of breeding its genetics, and we'll go from there." And so we did it. But anyway, the funny thing was, she came back and told me the next day, because she was coming to our home that evening right after we showed, and she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "these people were over there complaining that you were here because they had to compete against you." And I said, "Oh, that's nice of them." She says, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get a dog from Bill Shelton." And they said, "You're going to get a dog from Bill Shelton? How did you manage that one?" And I'm just like going, so it gives you insight how people, perceive things. Because guess what? They could have too. If they showed the interest and the passion I saw that she had with her dog. See, that's a different kind of interest. I've had other people, like I have a woman from Russia right now that I've chosen to work with.
Very passionate.
Oh my God. We have 2 file cabinets full of photographs of all of our dogs. She started at A. She looks through every photograph. And then she says, "Who is this? This is gorgeous." Or, or "Who is this?" She writes on the back of it who it is, because it doesn't say, but not all of them are labeled. And then she can tell me more, because I get very forgetful, about who's the dam and sire of so-and-so and so-and-so's dam and sire. And so that's somebody who's passionate. You know what I mean? Who's like, it's a different type of passion. And she's also, by the way, already a handler. She's incredible and very talented at training and grooming and everything. So I chose to work with her because she's very reverent and very passionate and very respectful, and just wants to learn everything she can. She's just like I was as a kid, consuming every book we have in the house and reading and going to photographs. And so you choose people for different reasons. But Audrey is proving to be also interested in the breeding, and she's very methodical. She's an architect graduate, she's a degree in architecture, and she has worked. And she has that kind of mind. Everybody's a little different, aren't they? You come from the right side or left side of your brain. Some people are and Maria's more, the woman from Russia, is very artsy and consumes it that way. And Audrey is very technical, and she's going to improve on everything she possibly can. And neither of them are afraid of giving you advice or taking it. I'm like, one day I came out of the ring and they're both giving me advice, and I'm going, what the hell? Everybody's a critic.
Bill and Steve, if breeders want to learn more about your dogs and your breeding program, do you have a website, or where can they go?
It's coming. And I just worked on some of the dogs and their names and their mothers and fathers to put them in the little Hall of Fame thing and what they basically did. Coventry.com, I think, or maybe it's CoventryCorgis.com. Or they can go to our Facebook page and scroll through that. There's lots of about the recent dogs and that sort of thing. If you're a brand new breeder, Steve wrote a little book about corgis. What's the press? You can still buy it on Amazon.
No, you can't buy it on Amazon. I think you can buy it on eBay.
Yeah, what's it called?
Breeder's Choice.
Yeah, and what's the book called?
Pembroke Welsh Corgis.
Okay, there you go.
This conversation has been outstanding. Thank you for sharing the Coventry story with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
That's it for this chapter of the Better Breeder Chronicles. We hope you found the Coventry story with Bill Shelton captivating, and that it will inspire you to pursue your highest goals in your breeding program. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. At the Better Breeder Institute, we encourage all conservation dog breeders to embrace your fellow breeders as partners and collaborators rather than competitors and rivals. With the unprecedented challenges we all face today, successful breeding programs can no longer operate on an island. Our purebred dog breeder community must come together, with everyone pulling in the same direction. This is crucial if we're going to successfully preserve and advance our beloved breeds. I'm Matt Stelter, closing the book for today. Best wishes to you and your breeding program from all of us at the Better Breeder Institute. We'll see you in the next chapter. Take care.